Hey Columbus, Tom Silva here from This Old House and Ask This Old House, and I'll be at the Dispatch Home and Garden Show on Saturday, February 16th. He says, I want to come by the project that we were working on. Well, a week or so later, they showed up, the film crew. And all of a sudden, this guy comes around, he's running a wire up my shirt. And I go, what's this guy want? He says, don't pay attention to him. Tom Silva, the legendary carpenter and contractor from This Old House, finally addressed the swirling rumors that have followed him for years. He has been quietly sitting on a truth that fans have been whispering about for decades. Now, how does someone work in the public eye for over 40 years, build an entire reputation on craftsmanship, and still manage to keep one of the biggest behind-the-scenes bombshells under wraps? So buckle up, because we're going from the cozy charm of New England carpentry to the raw truth that even die-hard fans never realized. Come along, Tom Silva's early life and path to carpentry. Tom Silva's journey into the world of construction didn't start under studio lights or in front of cheering fans. It started in the quiet corners of Lexington, Massachusetts, long before anyone would ever call him America's most trusted home improvement expert. The man so many people would later turn to for advice on fixing leaky roofs and restoring old homes began as just another kid in a working-class neighborhood, growing up surrounded by sawdust, hammer echoes, and the unmistakable scent of freshly cut wood. Isn't it funny how the most remarkable stories often begin in the most ordinary places? Tom was born into a family where building wasn't just a job, it was a way of life. His father, a skilled builder himself, didn't need to send young Tom to any fancy school to teach him the ropes. Instead, he handed him a tool belt and brought him along to job sites. According to those who knew him then, Tom never shied away from hard work. He watched, listened, and learned, not just the how of construction, but the why behind every cut and measurement. Why do we reinforce that beam? Why does this joint matter? Why spend time perfecting something no one will even see? The answers, passed from father to son, formed the blueprint for the craftsman Tom would become. Those early lessons, built around doing things right the first time, eventually became the heartbeat of his entire career. You've seen him build, restore, and teach with that calm voice and expert touch. But fans have always wondered, what's going on behind Tom Silva's calm demeanor? Why has he been stepping back lately? At 77, Tom finally breaks his silence and confirms the rumors that have followed him for years. And whether you've been watching him for decades or just found the show, what he says next might leave you speechless. Don't click away. You won't want to miss the final reveal. Growing up in Lexington, with its colonial buildings and historic charm, Tom was surrounded by examples of architectural craftsmanship that had stood the test of time. He didn't just see houses, he saw stories hidden in every beam and brick. These weren't just structures, they were pieces of history, lovingly built and meant to last. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of what we grow up around quietly shapes who we become? While many in the construction world may have started with textbooks or trade school lectures, Tom's real education came from working side by side with experienced tradesmen who knew their craft inside and out. This wasn't about passing exams, it was about passing down a legacy. Tom didn't just inherit tools from his father. He inherited a mindset, one that prioritized quality over shortcuts and pride over profit. Eventually, Tom and his brother Richard decided to channel everything they'd learned into something of their own. That's how Silva Brothers Construction was born. A family-run business rooted in old-school values, but eager to take on new challenges. Whether it was a small renovation or a massive historical restoration, Tom approached every project with the same care he had learned as a boy, and the results spoke for themselves. Word spread quickly throughout Massachusetts. If you wanted it done right, you called the Silvas. That reputation for top-tier craftsmanship is what eventually caught the attention of the producers at This Old House. At the time, the show was already beloved by viewers looking to learn more about home repairs and restoration. But they needed someone who didn't just know the work, but truly lived it. Tom was a perfect fit. What began as a guest spot evolved into a long-standing role, one that brought Tom's warmth, wisdom, and genuine love for the craft into homes all across America. Yet, despite the fame and TV cameras, Tom never let go of his roots. He remained grounded in the simple joys of his work, the satisfaction of a job well done, the pleasure of solving a tricky problem, the pride of passing knowledge on to others. Fans loved him not just because he was good on camera, but because he was real. He was the same guy who'd help his neighbor patch a roof as he was on TV explaining load-bearing walls. Over the years, Tom's legacy has become about more than just buildings. It's about people. It's about reminding folks that craftsmanship still matters, that taking pride in your work still means something, and that no matter where you start, whether in a dusty garage or a quiet New England town, you can build something lasting. Isn't that the kind of story we all need more of these days? In the end, Tom Silva didn't set out to become a television personality or a national icon. He just wanted to build things the right way, to honor the lessons his father taught him, and to share a little bit of that wisdom with anyone willing to listen. And maybe that's what makes his story so compelling. It's not about chasing fame, but about building a life, one plank, one beam, one honest day's work at a time. How Tom Silva became the face of This Old House. Back in the mid-1980s, when Tom Silva was simply going about his usual business as a hard-working contractor, the last thing on his mind was television. Why would it be? He had a thriving construction business, a steady stream of jobs, and zero ambition to step in front of a camera. But as life would have it, sometimes all it takes is one unexpected meeting to steer things in an entirely new direction. That meeting came in the form of a chance encounter with his neighbor, a television producer named Russell Morash. Now, how often does someone get discovered by a neighbor? It almost sounds like something out of a movie, doesn't it? Yet for Tom, it was very much real. Initially, when Morash floated the idea of Tom appearing on television, Tom didn't exactly jump at the opportunity. In fact, he turned it down flat, saying he was simply too busy. And who could blame him? He was running Silva Brothers Construction full-time and couldn't imagine juggling that with anything else, let alone cameras, scripts, or TV audiences. But Morash saw something more. He wasn't just looking for any contractor, he was looking for someone authentic, skilled, and deeply grounded in their craft. And in Tom, he found just that. Even though Tom declined the offer, Morash didn't give up. He had already seen Tom's work up close when Silva Brothers Construction built the set for his PBS show, The Victory Garden. And he believed Tom's craftsmanship deserved a bigger stage. The real turning point? It wasn't some formal audition or polished pitch meeting. It was Morash unexpectedly showing up at one of Tom's job sites with a camera crew in tow. According to Tom, he was setting up a room for another regular, Norm Abram, to shoot a segment about a kitchen. The next thing he knew, Morash walked in, clipped a microphone onto him, and just like that, Tom Silva was officially on camera. No script, no rehearsal, just him, his tools, and his know-how. Isn't it funny how sometimes life doesn't wait for you to be ready? By 1986, Tom had joined the cast of This Old House as the show's general contractor. And 2 years later, Silva Brothers Construction became the program's official contracting firm. From that point on, Tom's presence on the show only grew stronger. Over the years, he tackled renovation projects that most people wouldn't even dream of attempting. Take the 1887 Nantucket House, for example. It started out as a typical renovation, but ended up becoming almost a complete rebuild. Then there was the 1906 Arts and Crafts Church. Yes, a literal church that the team turned into someone's home. How often do you hear of something like that? One of the more jaw-dropping projects he worked on was a 1721 farmhouse that had actually tilted backward by 8 inches due to a rotted sill. Imagine trying to fix something like that without tearing the whole thing down. And let's not forget the Manchester by the Sea project, which was, in Tom's own words, way too big for the time allotted. It was supposed to take 18 months, but they managed to pull it off in just 10. If that doesn't speak volumes about his work ethic and ability to adapt under pressure, what does? But Tom Silva's contribution to this old house went far beyond bricks, beams, and blueprints. Over time, he became one of the show's most beloved educators. He had a gift for breaking down complex construction tasks into simple, understandable steps. Millions of viewers tuned in not just to see the transformations, but to learn from Tom because he made learning feel easy and even fun. He once said that if he hadn't become a contractor, he probably would have been a teacher. And in many ways, that's exactly what he became through the show. And his passion for education didn't stop at television. He became deeply involved in vocational education, playing a key role in Generation Next, an initiative by this old house aimed at encouraging young people to consider careers in the skilled trades. At a time when the country faces a shortage of workers in these essential fields, Tom reminded everyone that there are over 5 million jobs waiting to be filled simply because there aren't enough skilled people to fill them. That's not just a statistic. It's a call to action. And who better to deliver it than someone who spent his entire life building, teaching, and giving back? Absolutely, Nathan. Here's a much longer, more humanized and emotionally sticky version of that transition. One that gently ushers viewers into the next section, while telling them to stay locked in till the very end. So when people pause and reflect on Tom Silva's incredible legacy, what exactly will echo the loudest in their minds? Of course, they'll remember the jaw-dropping remodels, the way he turned chaos into clean lines, the technical brilliance, and that steady, no-drama presence that somehow made even the most complicated builds feel doable. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find something even more unforgettable. The quiet dignity of a man who never chased fame, never needed applause, yet still managed to become the beating heart of an entire generation of builders, dreamers, and DIYers. Isn't it wild to think that just one unexpected yes, one door he never expected to walk through, ended up inspiring millions of people to pick up a tool, fix what was broken, or build what they'd only ever imagined? But of course, no legacy comes without its cracks, its questions, and yes, its rumors. And that's where things take a very unexpected turn. Because behind the camera, behind the warm smile and those calloused hands, there were whispers, quiet, tensions, and truths Tom Silva kept close to his chest, until now. What did he finally decide to reveal after all these years? Why now? And is it true what people have been quietly saying all along? Stick around, because what you're about to hear next might just change the way you see Tom forever. Don't blink. The rumors, conflicts, and what he finally confirmed behind the warm smiles and smooth project walkthroughs that viewers have come to love on this old house, a quieter, far more complicated story was unfolding, one that, until now, remained mostly behind the curtains. Now nearing his late 70s, Tom Silva, the show's long-standing general contractor and beloved face of practical craftsmanship, has finally opened up about the behind-the-scenes struggles that nearly cost him his role more than once. It turns out, keeping the integrity of a home improvement show intact wasn't just about finding the right nail or measuring twice. It also meant standing firm in the face of creative pressures, production shortcuts, and changes that didn't always make sense to someone who had spent his entire life building things the right way. Back in the late 1980s and into the early 90s, Silva found himself constantly butting heads with the show's producers. At first glance, some might have called it just the usual creative disagreements, but according to him, these weren't small tips over how a scene was shot, or what angle looked better on camera. These were deep-rooted conflicts about the very soul of the program. Silva believed this old house should always put the craft first. Real materials, real tools, real problems, and real fixes. That was the heart of it all. But when producers started squeezing construction timelines just to keep up with filming demands, he felt it was like pretending the hard part of the work didn't matter. And for someone who had spent his entire life doing things by the book, cutting corners, even for the camera, felt like a betrayal. Can a house still stand strong if the foundation isn't solid? That's how Tom saw it, with integrity as the cornerstone of every build, including the show itself. Things got so tense that Silva eventually reached a breaking point. He gave the producers a choice. Either allow him more control over how the construction was portrayed, or he'd walk away. It wasn't a bluff, it was a man protecting his craft. After all, if the viewers couldn't trust what they were seeing, then what was the point? Thankfully, the producers recognized just how valuable Tom was, not just for his skills, but for the trust he had built with fans across the country. They adjusted the process to give him more input, and the show held on to one of its most genuine assets. But that wasn't the end of it. Fast forward to 2004, and Tom was once again staring down a crossroad. The stress had mounted again, and this time he took it further. He began writing a resignation letter. It wasn't impulsive. He talked it over with his family, weighed his options, and seriously considered stepping away from the show for good. The constant pressure to make decisions that favored production flow over construction logic had worn him down. Imagine dedicating decades of your life to a craft, only to feel like you were being asked to fake parts of it for convenience. Would you stay, or would you walk away to protect your name, your work, and your legacy? Producers caught wind of how serious Tom was, and moved swiftly. They didn't just beg him to stay, they offered something even more valuable: autonomy. They guaranteed that his work wouldn't be tampered with for the sake of runtime. They gave him more control on job sites, and promised to respect the technical standards he held dear. That resignation letter, it was never sent, but its presence alone spoke volumes about how close viewers came to losing the very person who gave this old house its authenticity. Then came the 2010s. Television itself was changing. Streaming platforms were booming, and audiences were shifting. Younger faces, happier edits, trendier content, it was the new normal. The producers started floating the idea of reducing Silva's screen time to make room for younger experts who, in their minds, might resonate more with newer viewers. But for Tom, this wasn't just about age or camera presence. He saw the heart of the show, its reliability, its depth, its commitment to teaching viewers the real process at risk of being watered down. Wasn't the whole point of this old house to show the grit behind the glamour, the real elbow grease behind the polished floors? He didn't stay quiet. He pushed back. Firmly, he reminded everyone that the audience didn't tune in for flash. They tuned in for wisdom, for the years of hands-on experience that someone like him brought to the table. And he wasn't alone. Fans, longtime viewers, even some of the younger staff backed him. The message was clear. Tom Silva wasn't just part of this old house. He was its foundation. Looking back now, it's easy to admire Tom Silva for his craftsmanship. But what many might not realize is how much strength it took for him to keep the show honest. He didn't just build houses, he built trust. And that trust was forged not just in wood and nails, but in the quiet battles he fought behind the scenes to protect the heart of something millions held dear. So next time you see him on screen, maybe ask yourself, how many times did he have to fight to keep that camera honest? And what would the show look like today if he hadn't? So the next time you see him smile at the camera or measure twice before a cut, pause for a second and wonder how many battles he had to quietly win just to keep that screen honest. His story left a whole few could put into words, but we'll try. Stick with us till the very end, because what comes next isn't just heartbreaking, it's unforgettable. The emotional impact of Austin Wilson's death. In 2018, a dark cloud unexpectedly settled over the tight-knit production crew of This Old House. Austin Wilson, a young, bright-eyed crew member who had been personally mentored by the beloved Tom Silva, passed away suddenly during a filming season. It was the kind of loss that hit hard and, without warning, one of those moments that makes everything else feel like background noise. For Tom, this wasn't just a professional blow, it was personal. People close to him and the production quietly shared how deeply the tragedy shook him. He wasn't his usual steady self. He pulled back from team conversations, grew quieter during set meetings, and even began questioning the very path he had walked for decades. Could it really be time to let go? Had the weight of it all finally become too much? Even for someone like Tom, who had spent his whole life building and fixing things, except this time, he couldn't fix what was broken. According to crew members who had worked with Silva for years, it was perhaps the first time they'd ever seen him seriously consider walking away. Not because he no longer loved the work, but because something fundamental had changed. But grief, like the homes he helped renovate, sometimes comes with hidden spaces. And in those long, quiet months after Austin's passing, Tom found support in the most unexpected places, especially from Austin's own family. They didn't blame him. In fact, they encouraged him. They told him Austin had always spoken so highly of him and how much he'd looked up to Tom, not just as a builder, but as a man. And slowly, bit by bit, Tom began piecing himself back together, just like he'd done for so many broken walls and neglected porches. Could he really retire now, knowing he still had something to offer? Knowing that walking away would mean stepping back from the people and the craft that had carried him through so many chapters of life. Then came the quiet but impactful announcement. In a closed-door internal production meeting in early 2025, Tom, now 77 years old, looked across the table at the familiar faces who had worked alongside him for years and confirmed what many had hoped but weren't sure they'd hear. He had no plans to retire. Not now. Not yet. The weight in the room lifted just a little. Tom said he was staying on as lead contractor and technical consultant for upcoming seasons with major projects already lined up in Westford and Ridgewood. There was a sense of calm in his voice, the kind that comes only from someone who's been through storms and found purpose on the other side. Why stop now when there's still so much to build, still so many stories left to tell through wood and stone? Tom's decision wasn't just about continuing a job. It was a promise that the integrity, care, and old-school craftsmanship that defined This Old House wouldn't fade away with time. It was a commitment to all those watching at home, those who grew up with his voice in their living rooms, teaching them that fixing something broken is always possible, even when the breaks are personal. He didn't have to say it outright, but the message was clear. Grief may have shaken him, but it didn't break him. And in the end, just like any good renovation, he came out stronger, and with even more heart, legacy, mentorship, and what comes next. As his decades-spanning career continues to unfold, with the same quiet determination that's defined him for years, Tom Silva's legacy has begun to take root in places that stretch far beyond the construction sites or the TV screen. And really, when you think about it, isn't that the true mark of a legacy? when your work starts to shape futures you'll never see? While viewers might know Tom as the affable master builder on this old house, those who've worked with him or been mentored by him know there's much more going on beneath the surface. Over the years, Tom has made it clear that he's not just in the business of restoring homes, he's in the business of building people up too. And that might just be his most enduring blueprint yet. For starters, Tom's mentorship has become a cornerstone of how he pays it forward. Back in 2016, he began working closely with his nephew, Charlie Silva, who is now the president of Silva Brothers Construction. And it wasn't some casual hand-me-down of responsibilities either. Tom invested time, energy, and wisdom into making sure Charlie was not only equipped, but confident to lead. Charlie's entry into this old house came through the Arlington Arts and Crafts House project, and from there, he became a familiar and trusted face on the show. But the beauty of Tom's guidance doesn't stop at family. He's been just as intentional about mentoring other skilled professionals across multiple trades. Whether it's Mauro Henrique working magic with finishing paint, Jen Novata creating harmony through landscape design, or Heath Eastman making sense of complex electrical systems, Tom is right there offering advice, encouraging collaboration, and ensuring each person feels like an essential piece of the puzzle. Why does he do it? Because he knows craftsmanship isn't a solo sport. It's a relay, and someone has to be willing to pass the baton. That mindset naturally led him to a broader mission: advocating for vocational training. Tom's involvement with Generation Next is a perfect example of this. Launched in 2016, the initiative aims to tackle America's ongoing shortage of skilled labor by encouraging young people to pursue careers in the trades. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you heard someone talk passionately about putting a tape measure in a kid's hand? That's Tom. He once explained that everything starts with something as simple as that: handing a young person a tool and watching their eyes light up. And once that spark is lit, there's no telling where it might lead. As an ambassador for the program, Tom doesn't just show up for the photo ops. He sits on technical advisory boards, speaks at industry panels, and stands shoulder to shoulder with folks like Mike Rowe to rally support. Together, they've helped raise awareness, scholarships, and even secured a generous $25,000 donation from Irwin to support the Home Builders Institute. Tom doesn't just want young people to dream, he wants them to build those dreams with their own two hands. Now, you'd think, after decades of doing all this, a man might start thinking about winding down. Not Tom. At 77, he made it clear, loud, and proud that he's not stepping away anytime soon. In early 2025, he reassured fans and colleagues alike that he'd continue serving as the main contractor on this old house. And it's not just talk. He's actively managing big renovation projects in places like Westford and Ridgewood, while also juggling responsibilities in production, engineering, training, and consulting. How does he keep going? Well, he's structured things in a way that lets him focus on what matters most without burning out. He's found a rhythm that works, a way to keep doing what he loves without wearing himself thin. And perhaps one of the most impressive things about Tom is how he navigates the fine line between tradition and innovation. He's not the kind of guy to jump on every new gadget or trend. No, he's more thoughtful than that. He sticks with time-tested techniques that have stood the test of time. But he's also wise enough to know that a little tech here and there can make a good thing even better. For Tom, it's not about replacing old ways. It's about enhancing them. He often says that progress should come in steady, measured steps, not flashy leaps. And isn't that refreshing in a world obsessed with shortcuts and fast fixes? His philosophy is all about evolving with purpose, while keeping the heart of the craft intact. In the end, Tom Silva's story isn't just about renovations, nail guns, and wood shavings. It's about values, hard work, patience, mentorship, and an unwavering belief in the power of doing things right. It's about creating something that lasts, not just in brick and mortar, but in people. So the next time you watch him on This Old House, remember, you're not just seeing a builder at work. You're witnessing a man who spent his life building legacies, one project, one apprentice, and one generation at a time. And doesn't that make you wonder how many lives can one person quietly shape just by showing up day after day with purpose and heart? Tom Silva is answering that question with every nail he hammers and every lesson he passes on. And thankfully, he's not done yet. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.